Hi there, I'm nicodehaan, and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced and natural wild world.
To recover our natural health and regain our rights and freedoms. I'm Ellen.
It's a beautiful day in Colorado here. It is 63 degrees and sun is shining. And what was
Heading into fall.
Yeah, it's a low of 50 tonight. It's been a little bit cooler, in fact, than most of the times. So it's really nice.
We had a great summer.
Yeah, we sure do. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Odysee channel, hit the like button, and you can help our channel grow. We're on a new platform, so I'm a little wondering what's
we're
going on.
trying something new here, and so you can see the articles and the charts and so on. So,
And the other one was kind of glitchy, so this is going to be a little bit easier. So if you hit the link below the show notes, you'll hit the link for Mother Earth Labs, and that'll take you to some products that we use to supplement our diet. And we like these products that we've been using. So hope you get that out. And if you have any comments or anything like that, you can reach me at nicodehaan@me.com. That link is also in the show notes. And all those topics that for today's show are also in the show notes. So you can check that out. And get all these tickers down. So yeah. So I guess we should mention my birthday's tomorrow.
Yeah.
So 80th birthday, and we had some people in town, and
we've been celebrating for a week, having adventures, having family and friends in from out of town.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful party on Saturday night.
Yeah, so that was really nice. Yeah. And it's nice to be 80 years old and healthy and feeling really good and feeling like we're in the best time of our lives now. I don't think I felt this good. I can't remember when. So
yeah, because mentally we're in the best place we've been in.
Yeah, people who have come here from Florida and from other places on the East Coast have really marveled how great Durango is, and we do want to keep it a secret, but we still want you to know it is one of the best places in the world to be, for sure.
Yeah, they all fell in love with Durango, and I think people were expecting a quiet, sleepy little town with not much to do, and there's literally 100 things to do here, and
a lot of things to do.
People have a good time.
Yeah. So let's start. We're going to be talking today about what the mainstream media is telling us about our health and what we should be eating.
Also the mainstream research and the mainstream.
Yeah, the institutions that the National Council for Health,
Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking today. And this first article is about fat. The AMDR for fat, acceptable versus optimal fat intakes, and the official acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges is
AMDR.
Yeah, they were determined by the Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine in 2005, and the
AMDR for fat was set at 20% to 35% of your total calories for the planning and assessment of the diets of healthy people.
Yeah, more people have started questioning whether these targets are suitable for the growing number of people who aren't metabolically healthy. And many popular dietary interventions have been used successfully for weight loss and diabetes management with fat intakes much greater than the recommended dosage. And we found that when we started going to the more
the primal and the keto.
Yeah, the keto diet, and now more, I would say, carnivore type of diet. We have upped our fat intake to maybe about 70%, I think.
Yeah, well, we say that doesn't mean that we're sitting there eating spoonsful of fat or anything like that. It just means that we're eating meat of various sorts.
Well, just a normal cut of meat has about 50% fat in it.
That's what I'm saying. We're getting the amount that's normally in beef or chicken or pork or lamb or fish or whatever it is that we're eating.
We're trying to eat the fatty portions, no doubt.
Yeah, we don't want them to cut all the fat off of the outside.
Yeah, when I go and look at a ribeye, I'm looking for the fatty
something marbled with a nice fat.
Yeah. So that's really basically what we're saying here.
Yeah. So it says that from Atkins in the 1970s to the more recent keto and carnivore diets, more fat and fewer carbs have brought many people the blood glucose stability, the feeling of satisfaction that you're not hungry, satiety, and weight loss that has evaded them for so long while following the official mainstream guidelines.
Yeah. This article is quite long. We're not going to get in the whole thing.
Well, it does show a chart of what they recommend
For
for
different ages.
protein, fat, and carbohydrates.
Yeah. And what is an acceptable nutrient distribution range?
Well, 1 second. The chart also shows ages, so it goes from male and female and then different age groups. So it's worth taking a look at.
Yeah. So according to the Food and Nutrition Board Institute of Medicine, an acceptable macronutrient range is defined as an intake range for a particular energy source that is associated with a reduced risk of chronic diseases while providing the adequate intake of essential nutrients.
Yeah, so, and again, they point out that the AMDRs have been set for planning and assessment of the diets of healthy people.
Yeah, so
yes.
Look
at the next sentence here. It says, it's worth noting, a recent study from Tufts University found only 7% of the U.S. adult population is metabolically healthy. And of course, as we've mentioned many, many times,
7%. That's right.
7%. That's 93% of adult humans in the United States are not metabolically healthy.
And I think when you look at the population, you can certainly see that.
Yeah. Well, we got diabetes, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and other conditions, the cardiovascular, the high blood pressure, all kinds of things going on, and cancer. And it all stems from the poor metabolic health and, of course, obesity.
Yeah. So more about the research, however, so more recent research has shown that the association between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol is not what it was once thought to be.
It's not what it was thought to be.
Yeah, in fact, the 300 milligram daily dietary cholesterol limitation was removed from the U.S. dietary guidelines for Americans in 2015.
It was quietly removed without any fanfare. They just took it out.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things to understand about that is that cholesterol plays such a huge role. If you're getting sunshine, it's cholesterol that converts the sunshine to vitamin D3. Mm-hmm. So if you are low in cholesterol, you go out in the sun, you're really not getting the maximum benefit. And all our hormones, when we talk about hormones, of course, women are really, hormones become really important and are impacted by that. So all these metabolic rates rely on cholesterol. And we kind of have a saying that we learned from different doctors that your body makes as much cholesterol as you need.
Yeah, exactly. And the older you get, the more cholesterol your body makes, because it also repairs your is it your veins, your arteries?
Your arteries. It's kind of like spackling paste. So when your arteries get scarred, then the cholesterol is coming in there. It's like the fire engine that goes to a fire. It's not causing the fire.
It's
putting out the fire, and that's what cholesterol does. Mm-hmm. It's always showing there when you have scarred arteries. Mm-hmm. The reason it's there to patch you up.
Mm-hmm. So it says, in fact, even more recent studies have shown very low cholesterol is associated with all-cause mortality. Yeah. So here are all these people on statins and trying to reduce their cholesterol. There actually may be, who knows what the long-term effects will be. That could be a problem.
Yeah.
And it says diet culture has had us fearing saturated fat and cholesterol.
Sorry about that. We do have.
Turn off.
Okay, there's a message, but.
Okay. Let's see, almost half a century, almost 50 years, they've been demonizing fat, saturated fat.
Yeah.
But most recent findings have found dietary saturated fats do not have negative implications on health that we once believed. And so, but of course, all these tests and all these charts and all these guidelines have not caught up with the most recent, sorry, I'm going to sneeze here. Okay, the most recent research. Yeah. Saturated fats, as we mentioned at length when we talked about the fats, was it last time or time before? Ansel Keys had made an association between the substantial amount of saturated fats and then concluded that they were the cause of the of heart conditions and problems, without taking into effect all of the high stress levels that followed World War II, increases in toxin exposure, and then the increased reliance on cigarettes and alcohol. And they point out in this article, increased use of seed oils and refined flour that occurred right around the same time that he was making his hypothesis.
Yeah, and there's many things that are going on. If we look at came to mind was the polio outbreak now that is in the Israel, actually in the bank, right, in the
Gaza.
Gaza bank.
Mm-hmm.
So think about what's going on there. All these emissions are being exploded.
Mm-hmm.
People are very poor health.
Yeah.
Munitions, yeah. So
and crowds, very crowded conditions, just like there were when all these a lot of these contagious diseases came about during the world wars, when everybody was in very close proximity with unsanitary conditions and so on.
Yeah.
So it says in summary, because factors other than diet can contribute to chronic disease, it is impossible to determine a defined level of intake that may prevent or cause chronic disease. And it talks a lot about what's the optimal amount of fat.
Yeah, and a lot of these charts and things that are really not that clear on what they're trying to say, but basically the following chart shows fat percentages versus the dietary quality.
Yeah. And
so the quality of food naturally has a lot to do with what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And if the quality of the food isn't that great, then no matter what the ratios of the nutrients you're getting, and they may not be bioavailable to you.
Or you get lots of calories without getting nutrients.
That's exactly. And I think that's what we're seeing in America. We're seeing so many people consuming a lot of calories and not getting the nutrients in there. So your body now ends up craving even more because the nutrients aren't there. I think that's the situation that we're here. The food quality has gone so downhill, especially if you're eating things like the fast food,
the highly processed food.
Highly processed foods. If you're just eating from animals and even vegetables that have no pollutions in them, then you're going to have those nutrients come in, and you're going to be eating a lot less with those nutrients being there, and you're going to be very satisfied. Yeah. And that's one of the things they mention here is that fat we've always known is what gives you satisfaction.
Yeah.
It's not, they
protein
mention,
and fat.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
But it's more the fat.
Mm-hmm.
Protein, yeah, because it has the fat in there. But if you're eating protein like rabbits, you're not going to be satisfied. You're eating a lot of them, and you starve, and it's too lean. Right?
Yeah. So and it's interesting. Go down to how has our intake of fat changed over time? Go down a bit.
This one.
Yeah. Keep going.
What is the typical?
No. Keep going. There you go.
What is the minimum fat intake?
How has our intake of fat changed over time? And they show some charts which show you that the charts. One chart shows you the calories from carbohydrate intake fell in the early part of the last century, but it increased in the 1960s till around 2000. That was when we had the food pyramid with all the basic carbs as the base for the
cereal.
Food.
Eat lots of cereal, eat some vegetables, eat very little meat.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of extra fat, and it says according to the USDA, that's at the bottom. Yeah. This increase mostly comes from monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, which are contained in hydrogenated vegetable oils like palm, soybean, and sunflower oils, which are common ingredients in the ultra-processed food.
Yeah, so the quality of these items, which every restaurant right now is using. There's not a restaurant that you can't go to. And
go down a little bit further. And it says increased food processing and manufacturing have enabled us to combine refined starch, sugar, and vegetable oils to make highly hyper palatable food. That's what we were talking about
Right.
previously. And that's your super high processed food that is not only addictive, but has the ability, it basically adds a lot of fat to your diet that's not good for you, and it contributes to obesity and diabetes and all of these other things.
So even though people are eating a lot of fats, most of the fats that they're consuming now, especially if you're going to restaurants, fat food, or if you're getting food that's highly processed, you're not getting the right type of fats. They're harder to digest. They end up very toxic, because if you're looking at all these vegetable oils, they're already toxic when they make them.
Mm-hmm.
After about an hour, they get rancid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talked a lot about the different types of fat and how you burn fat versus burning carbohydrates. It's a sustained longer term source of energy. And we just talked about cholesterol and how important that is. And so let's see.
The principle known as oxidative priority fat is the last in line to be used for fuel after your blood glucose. Mm-hmm. And that's really what now we're bringing out, is that it's not last in line. Fat in our ancestors was always first in line, because there were never many carbs out there. If you go out in the woods and try to find carbs that are edible, you're not going to find them. So it just makes sense from an ancestral point of view. Our ancestors ate a lot of fat because that was the only fuel that was out there.
And kept them warm in the winter.
Yeah. And they had to eat less. Mm-hmm. And we know that a lot of times hunting isn't that successful. So if you go without eating for a couple of days, you can't be going crazy. And I always tell the story that when I was hungry 20 years ago, I would
30 years ago,
maybe. Yeah. I would just go crazy. I would just be very nasty. And this
impatient
whole impatient
and oh my goodness.
Okay, let's not go there.
You started it.
Yes, I know. But it really does make a difference when you're very satisfied. And now we can go the whole day without eating, and we say, oh yeah, we're hungry, but it doesn't really make that much difference.
Well, we're ready. We usually eat breakfast and then don't eat the rest of the day until dinner time. And we say, yeah, I could eat, and it's not urgent.
Yeah. The last part of this here is talking about cholesterol.
Yeah, we already covered that.
Yeah, we really covered it, but there's a chart here that if we're looking here, that the cholesterol really has gone down in us, and probably cholesterol is the thing that we need the most right now. So people on statins and things like that, you're really damaging your body. So I think in the future, because of all the knowledge that we're getting, that this cholesterol debate and adding statins to you to keep your cholesterol down is going to go away. Most of the people that I know that had been on statins stopped them, feeling much better, even though their doctor are saying, well, you're over the limit, but it's not the way it used to be.
Limit.
It's not my limit, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize on cholesterol, cholesterol is not an essential nutrient. Your body produces 90% of its cholesterol demands, whether you consume fat, protein, or carbs. So
we do not have set a stretched target for cholesterol. So there's all different types of cholesterol.
Well, plus everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's body is different, and different needs and different.
And remember, if you're on statins and you're getting low cholesterol readings, now you're going out in the sun and your body's trying to make that vitamin D and it can't. So maybe it's upping the cholesterol naturally.
Yeah, that's right. It could have the reverse effect.
Yeah, it can have the reverse effect exactly on it. So,
all right. Well, let's move on. There's a lot of information here if you want to take a look at the article.
Yeah.
And they do differentiate between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol.
Yeah.
And they do say that athletes who expend a lot of energy require more carbohydrates and fat. So let's
go to the next article then.
Okay.
And this one is titled Carbohydrates, Optimal versus Acceptable Macronutrient Distribution Range, the
Yeah.
AMDR
Yeah,
that we talked about.
the article covers the same introductory information. It starts by saying the AMDR for carbs is 45% to 65% of your total calories, and the dietary guidelines for Americans accompanied this with a recommended minimum daily carbohydrate intake of 130 grams of carbohydrates per day. But the AMDRs were established and published in the early 2000s, have not been revised since, and numerous changes have been made in the field of nutrition, including the removal of dietary cholesterol as a nutrient concern from the 2015 dietary guidelines, which we just talked about.
Yeah.
So,
So some of the shortcomings.
these guidelines, it says, they were based on association between clinical endpoints like coronary heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity, that appeared to point to trends rather than actual research and looking at the endpoints per se.
Yeah, and it says here, because factors other than the diet contribute to chronic illness, it is impossible to determine a defined intake level at which chronic disease may develop or be prevented. Since we're at 70% fat, there's no way that we could get up to even 30% because we want a bunch of protein in there. We know that the protein is the building blocks of everything that we are. So we don't need a lot of protein, but we certainly, I think as we get older, there's a lot of people not eating enough protein. But carbohydrates, we try to minimize those, and especially if they're of the type that are ultra processed.
We do our very best to completely avoid ultra processed.
Yeah, the carbohydrate intake that we do have is mostly the herbs that we add to our meats. And then we have a little thing that we use for our fat. If we're sometime in the early evening, if we felt like we haven't eaten enough, we'll take some of these almond crackers and put a bunch of butter on them and eat that as a vehicle for more fat. So we're always really
and that satisfies your hunger, and also it's very calming. It has a calming effect.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to disturb sleep or anything like that. So we're using just a small little thin cracker as a basis to carry that fat into us, and it really makes a difference. So we use these little hacks that we have to increase our fat intake when we're hungry and not turn to the chips and other things.
It goes on. If it's still talking about the shortcomings of these guidelines, it says the institution developing the AMDRs looked at the connection between populations currently free of chronic disease and what they eat, but they did not examine which ways of eating contribute to those particular illnesses. In other words, it would make sense to determine dietary habits that lead to disease and avoid them.
Yeah, I've often said that if you go to a place where people that you can see that are not well and see what they're eating, don't eat that stuff. Yeah, exactly. So we go on here while
it says while the AMDRs are based on how seemingly healthy people eat, these guidelines are not based on how humans ate in their natural food environment before the creation of ultra-processed food.
And here we have the current chart, which is Choose My Plate. And you can see that the protein, they don't really even mention what the protein is.
No.
And they have vegetables, grains as half.
Well, a full quarter there.
Well, vegetables quarter, grains a quarter, and then fruits. So
are a quarter.
Protein being only a quarter, probably right, maybe even less for us. But then the vegetables, the grains, and the fruits, notice there's nothing about fat in here at all. because they're assuming that fat is accompanied by the vegetables, by the fruits, by the grains, and by the protein.
Mhm.
But the fruits that are with the grains we know are not bioavailable. They're mostly rancid in most forms.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of
or they're indigestible
Yeah.
because our bodies are not adapted
right.
to make use of the kind of fat you find in vegetables.
Yeah, and vegetables.
That's why we put a lot of butter on the vegetable.
Right, exactly. And then there are some fruits that have a lot of fat, like avocados.
Right.
But there's a lot of fruits that have a lot of other things that we don't want.
Mhm.
And most of the fruits were developed to be
Too much
sweeter.
sugar.
Yeah, so if you had them in the original form,
Mhm.
then perhaps it would be good for us, But
Well, and certainly seasonal and so on.
yeah, and that.
Then, all right. So then it also points out that the AMDRs do not elaborate on quantity. And gives no detail of how to adjust your diet to get the optimal benefits. And finally, and this really knocked my socks off, although I don't know why I was surprised. Finally, and perhaps most concerningly, a recently published review found 95% of the U.S. Department of Agriculture Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee members had conflicts of interest. They were with the food and or the pharmaceutical industries, including Kellogg, Abbott, Kraft, Mead Johnson, General Mills, Dannon, and the International Life Sciences had connections with multiple members. So it says research funding and membership of an advisory executive board jointly accounted for more than 60% of the total number. Yeah. And that's crazy.
So if we go past all these charts, there's a question here that what is the optimal carbohydrate intake? And the chart shows people consuming the least amount of energy between 10% and 20% of their calories from non-fibrous carbohydrates.
Yeah, let me back up just 1 second. We're just talking about the energy that you generate by digesting and processing the food that you're eating.
Yeah.
Okay. People who consume the most energy tend to eat 45% of their energy as non-fiber carbohydrates. And towards the far right of the chart, you see that people who can consume a very low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet also tend to consume fewer calories. However, few people can maintain such a low-fat diet for long.
Yeah, it's very challenging. And
getting adequate protein is very difficult.
Yeah, and of course, the thing for the last 40 years before they started now that carnivore and that low-fat or low-carb diets are more of the norm among fit people and healthy people. They always told you, don't eat the fat. And we had the skim milk coming into play. And we had all these different juices that people were using for energy. And still a lot of my athletes at the dojo are fueling themselves. I'm going to go for a long run, so I need some fruit juice or some Gatorade or whatever it is.
Or what's that stuff called? The high caffeinated.
Yeah, those are mostly dangerous too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it says to summarize, the optimal non-fiber carbohydrate intake for satiety and nutrient density is between 10 and 20%.
Well, not only that, satiety from carbohydrates does not last very long. Mm-hmm. If you're eating a bunch of chips, you're going to be, the reason you eat the whole bag is because they're not very satisfying.
Not satisfying. Yeah.
That's right. So, and they mention the satiety in carbohydrates, and I really think they should even just drop that whole thing, because carbohydrates don't give you very much of it. Even when you're a vegetarian, vegetarians eat a ton of roughage and stuff like that
Beans
your body. Well, it's not so much, it's the quantity, because you're eating 3 meals a day and snacking in between. Whereas the carnivores and the low carb people are usually eating 1 or 2 meals a day. And if they're eating 3 meals a day, they're certainly not snacking, most of them.
And they're not eating big meals,
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just touch one. Then with the next article is about protein.
Yeah, there's a lot more in these articles. You can kind of go.
Let me just see if there's anything. It's the same kind of thing in the protein. In the article, it says modern diseases like, again, diabetes, cancer, metabolic syndrome, autoimmunity, and dementia all stem from poor metabolic health and obesity. So these articles are looking to help you control your blood glucose and to feel satisfied when you eat.
Yeah.
So you don't overeat.
So the next one is the protein, acceptable and optimal. Again, they're looking what's the best for us. So the acceptable range for protein is between 10 and 35% of calories. And I think that's about right. I think we're probably.
And later on in the article, it says the optimal and ideal protein intake. Our analysis shows, says the article, that the optimal protein intake is 50%. So half of what you eat. And can you overeat protein, it says. And the answer is that there's no, they did studies of athletes who ate a lot of protein. And
Where are you?
I'm pretty far down,
Oh.
down below all the, because the other stuff we kind of covered in the other two articles. It said that athletes who consumed extra protein showed no adverse effects in terms of weight gain. So that was interesting. Will I gain more muscle if I eat protein?
Well, certainly protein has.
It's way past it.
Oh, you're way ahead of me there, babe.
Yeah, I'm just skipping over the stuff we already covered.
Okay.
So will I gain more muscle if I eat more protein? Just a little bit further.
Well, I think this part here, can you eat?
I just covered, can you overeat protein? So here, will I gain more muscle if I eat more protein? And it says,
well, while protein can be stored as fat, it's unlikely because it's difficult for your body to do. Amino acids must first be converted to glucose, which is glycogenesis, and then to fat, which is lipogenesis, both of which are energetically expensive processes.
Again, as I talked about how much energy you expend digesting and using.
Right.
But when it says, will I gain more muscle? It says, eating enough protein facilitates muscle growth when combined with resistance training.
Yeah.
So it's the exercise that gives you the muscle, not so much the amount of protein.
Yeah. You can't just eat protein and just sit on your butt.
And it'll be magically developed muscle.
So, and the important thing about protein too is that we've discovered is that you need the essential ones that your body can't make, that you can only get from food. Cholesterol will make certain amounts of amino acids for you, but there are 9 to 11 amino acids that your body cannot make. You can only get them from food. All of them are available in meat, but you really have to pick and choose the ones that are available from vegetables and grains. Most of them are not bioavailable unless you start fermenting them. And the same with the vegetables. If you're fermenting these products, and I think this is why the Chinese, Japanese, Korean invented so many fermented foods. They used
well, it also helps preserve it.
Well, that's another reason, and I think through the natural process of preserving it. So that's their survival instinct, preserving the food. But that process in itself is what kept us healthy, because now a lot of those things that were in there that are vitamins and nutrients that we need and minerals become bioavailable in a greater quantity. So you don't have to eat as much of them. So it just makes sense that our ancestors did this, probably not knowing that, hey, I'm going to be healthy if I do this. No, I'm not going to starve because I preserve
knowing
the food.
that the only way to keep the food from spoiling was to do this. Now, there's a section much further down that says, how does protein need change as we age? And this is interesting because you keep hearing about how seniors and people who are aging are not, don't eat as much.
Right.
But it says here, official dietary guidelines typically recommend a higher protein intake for people over 70. Despite a tendency for their energy intake, activity output, and appetite to decrease, there's a disease called sarcopenia, and it's muscle wasting. And it's a significant concern for the elderly because they start losing their strength and they become frail. and fall and have lots of injuries and damage to their bodies if they're not eating enough protein.
Yeah, as we age too, we tend to be less active and lose muscle mass, and that's probably something that needs to be addressed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Why should you be less active? I think if
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me that living here in Durango, we see an incredibly healthy aging population. The people in this neighborhood walk all over the place, and our subdivision is not flat. And they walk their dogs and they go for a walk, and then you see them in town and they're all hiking and keeping active and moving their bodies, and it makes a big difference.
And also the environment here makes you want to get out in it.
Yeah, because the weather's beautiful, and
you've got woods to discover, and it's just beautiful here. That's for sure.
And they particularly point out here that older postmenopausal women need a lot more protein. They thrive on a higher protein percentage. So
it's exactly the opposite of actually what's happening and what was recommended by the institutions here. Yeah. So important to understand that as we go older, we don't have to be less active. We can be as active as possible. The reason we're not active,
you're going to go weightlifting or anything.
Well, the thing is too that I think people are less active because there's more aches and pains, and it's really that is because of the way we're eating and the way society is polluting us.
Yeah, and like arthritis. So many people have arthritis, and it could be osteoarthritis, it could be rheumatoid arthritis, it can be. There's all kinds of types of arthritis. And their joints freeze up and things happen, and there's a lot of pain involved.
Yeah.
But eliminating the grains from my diet completely,
that really made a big difference.
Eliminated any pain whatsoever in the joints. And so that was wonderful. All right, let's go on to, what do we have? One more article?
Yeah, there's another article. Let me get to it.
Or do you want to cover it or not?
Yeah, we definitely want to cover that. 8 strategies
to help you achieve and maintain your ideal weight.
Yeah, let me put
and it's interesting. Put it on the screen because I want them to see the photo of that. They look at the picture of the person they picked out to show you.
Weight management involves using sustainable techniques, behaviors, and processes to achieve and maintain a weight and body composition that's right for you. Learning how to maintain your weight is a key strategy for staying fit and lowering your risk for developing certain healthy conditions. Yeah, and this is something that when we were growing up was never really talked about because people really weren't that heavy. I mean, it was very, very few, probably 1 out of 100 people that we knew were overweight. And
people they gained a little weight as they got older, but it wasn't the obesity epidemic that we have now.
And the thing is everybody's working hard, and who wants to do extra activity when you're home and you may be in an office all day and you're still tired. Yeah, you're sitting. So you sit more, and then TV was born all of a sudden in the 50s and 60s, and then all of a sudden now you're watching.
Now it's the internet, the computers, the devices.
Yeah, so there's a lot more things, and of course we had been told to stay put for a few years too. That didn't help anything at all.
So they start by saying how to manage weight. And it says, okay, you eat more than you move, then you gain weight. You don't burn the calories. You eat more calories than you burn, basically. But it points out, diet is not the only thing that dictates your weight.
It's not only that. Remember that we had a lot of people in the 50s and 60s that didn't do a lot of moving, and they weren't overweight. So it's really not the movement so much. It's what we are feeding the population.
So it points out that there are other factors: genetics, state of the gut biome, and that's all the microbes and bacteria, fungi, and viruses in your gastrointestinal system.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that we do, we want to get rid of all this bacteria, but just like we talked about the other day, in the mouth, we have a lot of bad bacteria, but we also have a lot of good bacteria, and we want to get rid of the bad, but the good we want to keep. Now, if you're using Listerine, and if you're using mouthwash, or if you're using antibiotics, it kills all the bacteria. So these strategies, short term, may save your life, but on a long-term basis, it's not good for you.
Damage your entire health,
exactly right.
Your entire body,
Yeah,
your balance, everything. The balance of your body.
Yeah, it says here one way to ensure your energy expenditure matches your intake, energy intake, is being more physically active and exercising. So burning off those excess calories.
So once your body's taken all the fat it needs, and anything else is going to get stored, once it burns off.
Yeah, but it doesn't get stored if you're eating a good diet.
Right, that's the point.
Yes, exactly.
That's the
right.
point.
So they're talking about portion control. They're talking about drinking more water.
Food, it says.
Yeah. Avoid late meals. Naturally.
Yeah, don't eat. Yeah, the later you eat, the less digested your food is when you go to bed.
Yeah. Consider intermittent fasting. And I think that's a good strategy if you're healthy, but if you're not healthy, this is very difficult.
Right.
And in some cases may be dangerous. Yeah. Managing stress. Well, if you're stressed, how do you manage it?
Well, they say every time I read, manage your stress, okay, right. You show
Let's
me
get the whip out and
you show me how to do that. I'm going to make a lot of money. It's like, how do you manage your stress? But they do mention, they say yoga, journaling, spending time in nature to help manage your stress.
Those are good things.
Regular sleep, very important. 7 to 9 hours of sleep is pretty much what all of the articles are saying. And it's important. If you sleep well, your body, it's a time when your body repairs itself. It digests the food.
Well, hopefully before you go to bed, you digest the food.
Yeah, because you ate early enough. You gave yourself enough time.
Yeah.
And you didn't eat so much, and you didn't have that late night snack that's undigested in your stomach.
Unless it's like a piece of fat or something like that, then it kind of just absorbs in your body.
You didn't have the bag of chips.
Yeah. So here is the article says what makes a weight management plan successful.
Well, you have to make sure it's sustainable. So don't set yourself crazy goals that you can't achieve, and then you become frustrated and it gets worse.
Yeah.
Choose the kind of food you're going to eat that is sensible for you and your budget and your diet.
Yeah, it says keep track, and I think keeping a journal is important. But I think keeping a journal of what you ate and then how you felt the next 2 days.
Yeah, that's even more
better strategy, because then you can relate the food to how you feel. And a lot of times that just doesn't connect.
Yeah, well, you don't think about it. A couple of days later, you don't feel so well, or your
like
system isn't working right. Or...
It's like I do really well on 1 beer, sometimes 2 beers if it's over longer. And I have 3 or 4 beers. The next day, I don't feel good, and it's easy for me to track that because it's not something that I do that often. Right. But with food, if you're eating the normal diet here in America, you need to write down what you're eating and then tracking how you feel the next 2 days, and then look back and see how that can change by the way you change what you eat.
Yeah, it also talks about don't be, going on a diet in which you deprive yourself of every single thing you ever like to eat is not sustainable.
No,
you're not going to stick to it.
That's true.
So you have to be sensible about that too. Your diet can still include some of those extra foods that you really enjoy, but in moderation, in small portions, not every day.
Well, I think just the diet is an indication, the way we think about it today, a diet indicates this is something I'm going to do short term to get healthy.
Right.
When the diet really is what you eat every day.
It's a lifestyle rather than...
And then you normalize your body. So I think that strategy is better. So balancing your food choices, you shouldn't be over restrictive, but why not just go onto a program that other people that are healthy that are doing and just stick with that. And it has to include being very satisfied with what you eat. Yeah. And that's where the fat
you have to
comes
like it too. I mean, there's no point in eating if it doesn't taste good to you. and it doesn't feel satisfying.
Yeah, so some of these things like being specific and measurable and achievable and realistic and time bound are kind of meaningless unless you do it in a really.
But milestones are not a bad thing.
No, certainly
You know,
not.
and so many times I've met somebody who says, I have to lose 50 pounds, and I only lost 2. I said, how long did it take you to gain the 50 pounds? Years.
Probably.
So give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Take it slow and lose it over a period of time. Don't try, and because it'll backfire on you. You won't be able to stick to it. You'll probably, and it seems the research shows that you'll get gain it all back.
Here is how to stick to a weight management plan.
Yeah, this is actually some good stuff here. Plan.
Receiving incoming transmission. Link established. Receiving incoming transmission.
It says plan and prep your meals beforehand. Figure out what you're going to eat. You know, buy your groceries based on a couple of days of food, and so on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had a couple of incoming calls today that I needed to take, and I'm taking them. So that's just the way it goes. Okay. Hey, Brian, let me call you back in a minute. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see. We're looking at, say, plan your meals, prep your meals. You know, you can, if you're going to eat lunch, you know, pack your lunch, put it together a healthy lunch, and don't put snacks in there. Don't put the chips in there, and so on. And keeping your journal, we just talked about. And
when to seek support, I think hang around with people who are all healthy. Join a group of people that you are drawn to by the way they look and the way they act and the way they feel. Take up a sport or dancing or something.
Or regularly move. You don't. It's not a matter of, you don't have to go running.
No.
You don't have to go weightlifting. You just
taking
move.
a walk is enough.
Taking a 20-minute walk.
Yeah.
Is fine. You know. Yeah. Look around the neighborhood. See what's going on.
Well, at least our neighborhood, you can do that. For sure. Then.
Okay, so then we had a couple of YouTube videos.
Yeah, I'm going to put one of them in here, and this is an important one, I think. This is Callie Means. I've listened to a couple of his podcasts. He talks about the truth about how big pharma and the news manipulate you. And I think it's important to understand what's happening here in our country that makes us unhealthy. And these are groups. It's almost like we here in America are in a state where the corporations and the government are colluding together and giving you the messages. These are the things that we fought in these great wars that we had. We fought fascism, and the definition of fascism is the government and corporations getting together to influence you. And this is something that to control you. Yeah. So check the video out. We're not going to play it here. It's a little lengthy, but in fact, you can look up Callie Means. He also talked to Robert Kennedy
Jr.
Yeah, and
he's talked to a lot of people.
You know, it's the thing that we want mainly is to be healthy, and I think that's where America should be heading. I think that's the first priority.
And hopefully people are becoming more aware. There's more and more people who are interested in talking about it, who've asked us a lot of questions and are basically, and say, you know, like we had dinner with my cousin last night and talked about xylitol for mouth health.
Yeah.
And he was very interested. He said, send me information. And
because he's at the age where his teeth are having a problem. He's got some bridges and some implants and things, which I have too. And, you know, you want to maintain these things in a healthy form. And unfortunately, most dentists aren't talking about this.
Yeah, well, you don't want gum disease, and you don't want problems with root canals and all those other things, you know. And you don't want to be using mouthwash because it damages your biome.
Yeah.
And so this is a nice swishing around in your mouth a little xylitol. Like I use 1/4 of a teaspoon.
Yeah, because it does expand a little bit.
Well, your saliva fills your mouth,
exactly,
you know. So
And this actually starves the bad bacteria, yet maintaining the good bacteria. So,
And
I
as
think
we saw in
it's
the
never
last,
too late to learn.
when we saw in the last, we were looking at that podcast from the dentist who
Yes.
had been working with xylitol for many years.
Yeah.
It helps rebuild enamel if you're losing tooth enamel. It
Yeah.
helps whiten your teeth. It helps with gum recession. It helps with inflammation in the mouth. Prevents plaque from accumulating.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting.
So we're going to continue this journey of trying to maintain our health as we grow older, and it's something that we have a passion for. So we're going to continue this podcast. Hopefully, this was. I think the new ones will be a little bit smoother. We're on
And the
this new
phone
plan.
won't be ringing every
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Usually, I turn it off, but I had some essential appointments today that I had to keep track of, and well, that's just the way it goes. Anyway, we appreciate you
It's
sticking around.
live
Yeah,
TV, folks.
exactly.
What can you do?
Thanks for sticking around.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Let's stop camera down the bottom there.
Bye bye.
Be well.